want to welcome you to the 2022 Copa Health 9th Annual Emergency Preparedness Conference.
How is this helping vulnerable populations?
The energy demand during high heat periods is such that it could break the grid. And research shows that 100% of the people in the metropolitan Phoenix area will be adversely affected.
OSHA can show up at your site now unannounced and do an inspection for heat, where normally they would only show up at your site if someone issued a complaint, a worker issued a complaint.
This is such a great opportunity to see different emergency preparedness partners. Looking forward to the rest of the day and all the other topics to come.
Next topic that we're going to want to tackle is when critical systems are overwhelmed.
95% of emergencies is planning. And you spend all that time writing these plans, writing mitigation plans, and figuring out your strategies for how you're going to address an emergency if it happens. And then you have 5% of your time, which is going to be spent actually responding.
There's never enough when there's a big disaster. And so some people are going to have to go without. And you don't want to be one of those people. So make sure that your plans are in place so that not only are you taken care of, but then you can help others.
So 2020 was the year of the unexpected. Like Rob mentioned, not only was there a global 100-year pandemic, there was civil unrest throughout the county and a literal swarm of wildfires.
In all of our exercising, when we were exercising pandemic scenarios, that we couldn't open an emergency operations center because we couldn't bring people together.
When we talk about resources, how important people are and how people are considered probably your greatest resource that you have at your disposal to utilize.
The cost of a successful cyber attack for organizations of any size was around $200,000. 60% of businesses go out of business within 6 months after being victimized.
There was 147 million consumers' data that was leaked to cyber criminals.
So what we do recommend at Copa is to use a long password or passphrase.
Are our cell phones any less vulnerable to viruses and malware than computers?
Our cell phones and mobile devices are not any less vulnerable.
What a great conference. I'm learning so much.
Copa delivers again. This has been a great conference so far.
This is a great conference. Copa is doing such a great job bringing a bunch of cool partners and learning more about emergency management and how each of our different diverse groups work together in this line of work.
What is important is some of the other things people said, and some of them said we didn't have access when the pandemic hit. Our transportation quality was terrible when we needed it. Our access to food in the area doesn't really exist anymore. At the time the food city had closed, that was the closest.
The people become the most important piece, and those networks that you build through the relationships, through all of these activities, create small impacts, small improvements with the people. That is what ultimately builds resilience.
The next panelist is a unique individual. Not only is he an emergency room doctor, but he is the sitting current Lieutenant Governor of the state of Hawaii.
So when we closed down in March of 2020, we dropped off 99.6% of our travelers, which is our entire economic activity. So we went from about 2.7% unemployment, lowest in the country, to the highest in the country, 23%.
Taking early actions, as we all have learned over the years, that it's very significant. Having a good situational awareness of what is taking place and where it may go. Those are really critical issues.
Similar to studies about clinicians, we've also seen studies come out recently about public health professionals and showing the strain that public health workers face during the COVID-19 response. About half said they plan to leave their job within 5 years.
As leaders, when we're looking at an incident, we could get the temptation of being tunnel visioned to give it your all and fight the good fight. But as Jessica's presentation reminds us, is that we have to keep an eye on getting everybody back.
The 8 dimensions of wellness, while originally were developed by a clinical model, provides a valuable guide for creating a holistic approach to people operations, which here at Copa Health, we call people first.
If you don't make time to take care of yourself, life will eventually force you to take care of yourself, possibly through illness.
Stay intellectually engaged. He said it doesn't matter if you're 80 or 82. He was in his 80s. If you have a project that you are working towards, you're going to be young. If you are 23 and you have nothing to work for, you're going to be old.
I kid you not, 10% of life is what happens to you, and 90% is how you deal with it. If you remember that, things will not be so bad. 90% of life is how you deal with the situations we're faced with. So we all have opportunities to look at the bright side of things.
And so what it really looks like is the relationships that you have. And the relationships that you have is going to be what's the source of your strength.
We need to think creatively. We need to work with our providers. We need to work with access to really think about other models and other ways to provide care to individuals. So that's been a big part. The other thing that's really, really critical moving forward is, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, even with telehealth in place, there's many that went without care.
And so during the pandemic, when there were calls from many different entities asking us to do things that we felt like were outside of our comfort zone, we still did it. And we just remained compassionate, understanding, sensitive, and we always lead with the heart. And when you lead like that, you can endure anything.